Let's Talk with Big Chief and yours truly, Stero. You know what I mean? And we're going to get into some things today, discuss a few things, and let's get it.
Yo, peeps, our fans, everyone out there in internet land, we just wanted to thank you for tuning in all the time and giving us support. And we love you, man.
Facts.
Now, today we just want to discuss the issue of Brittney Griner along with Mr. Viktor Bout, who was the infamous arms dealer. Today we will discuss like whether or not the deal was a fair swap, a fair trade on behalf of the United States government and the Russian government. All right. So, as we know, in the past we have been like educated on Brittney Griner, on the WNBA star, who resides in the off season in Russia. And she played for a Russian team for many years, over like 10
The
years.
Olympic gold medalist.
And Olympic gold medalist, yes. Thank you, sir. In which she was arrested for allegedly, or well, it's not alleged anymore, because she admitted to carrying cannabis oil into Russia and getting caught at the airport, in which she pled guilty and she was sentenced to over 9 years and was recently sent to the Russian prison in the Gulag. And the United States government was negotiating with the Russian government to release her, and one of the trade was in which it was like a 2-for-1,
right?
In which a former U.S. Marines, along with Brittney Griner, to be traded for Mr. Viktor Bout, who is the infamous Russian arms dealer. So basically, Mr. Bout, just a little background on him. He was a former intelligence officer in the Russian government. And when the Russian government collapsed, there was like a lot of surpluses of Russian military equipments, in addition to the Russian cargo airplanes. Now, he had a lot of military connections and what have you. So allegedly, the Russian government helped facilitate him transporting a lot of these ex-surplus military equipments like AK-47, bombs, airplanes, and what have you. So he was able to transport a lot of these, equipments to whether it is terrorists fighting against United States and other Western country, to drug dealers, right, and to gangsters. And in addition, he also helped fuel the Blood Diamond wars in Africa. So we just want to discuss whether or not if this was a fair deal. Matter of fact, the U.S. Marines, the Russian government denied releasing him. So
that's Mr. Paul Whelan.
Paul Whelan, yes.
And subsequently, Mr. Trump, number 45, had declined to, facilitate that whole, release and trade of Mr. Whelan. And his people, his family are still kind of upset with that. And he still languishes in a Russian gulag as we are speaking right now. Big respect to the administration for, bringing Brittney home to her family for the holidays. That's a good look for them, But what I wonder is, what took them so long? Because this has been on the table for quite some time now, and they choose now to, bring her home.
So, we're saying that. Do you think that it was a fair trade?
I mean, this guy was notorious,
right?
Okay, and he has a very, very inimical background as far as arms dealing to all types of individuals around the globe.
Right.
So, arms dealer, basketball star, it's kind of like a fine line, man, Was it a fair trade? What do you call fair?
Now, in terms of, and they call him the Merchant of Death, all right? As a matter of fact, there was a show a movie that came out back in the days. Actually, Nicolas Cage was the one that starred in that show, and it was made. They made it based on the of his history, right? And do be reminded that during the crisis in Africa with the blood diamonds, there were a lot of people dying, and they were dying because of these the same weapons that Mr. Boot was basically selling to them, you know, and it was a crisis. A lot of Africans was losing their arms, and because they didn't want to mine for these diamonds, and these warlords say, "Hey, no, you're gonna have to mine these diamonds so I could sell it on the black market to get more weapons." So basically, this helped fuel it. And I don't know, people are saying that the Biden administration did it because there was a lot of pressure on him, and the LGBTQ community is very powerful within Washington and so forth. So they put a lot of pressure on him for him to help facilitate this and what have you. And what's going to happen once Mr. Boot is released now? Do you think that he's just going to go retire and go into his rocking chair and rock his children? No, he's going to, at this time, basically springboard back into the same type of business he was in prior, especially now with this war in Ukraine. You know, will he be able to negotiate with other countries that have surplus weapons to help bring it into Ukraine to fight the Ukrainians? So these are a lot of things that people are throwing out there.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see what his, motives are. I think if he was to stay relatively low key, it would be in his best interest because the spotlight is on him now, the international spotlight.
Yeah.
I mean, because this was a huge deal as far as, politically speaking,
Mm-hmm.
And I've been seeing the press about it and, people for and against and, individuals who are kind of just, rallying around Brittney and, individuals who are condemning the Democrats and the whole Biden administration for, trading a war criminal basically for, a basketball star.
And we all know that in the past, presidents have basically made some terrible, terrible deals. Prime example, Obama, he released a lot of the Taliban out of Guantanamo Bay. In addition to Trump released a lot of Taliban from the prison prior to Biden pulling out the United States army out of Afghanistan. And now Biden with the Brittney Griner and Viktor Bout. Viktor Bout.
So, I mean, from the standpoint of international affairs, the Americans are happy that, one of theirs has been brought home.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. But from the standpoint of those who have been affected by, the actions of Mr. Bout,
mm-hmm.
they're not so, happy, so to speak, in terms of just being affected by the crimes that he's committed, and their families have been affected by those crimes.
Yeah.
So,
in a kind of sense, a lot of detractors are basically saying that Brittney Griner knew what she was getting into. She knew the history of the Russian government and the Russian society, and no way in hell she should have brought any drugs because from what was reported, the Russian government is very, very strict when it comes to certain type of crime or crime that you might get away with within the United States. You get a little slap on the wrist. They take it serious, like drugs and so forth.
I mean, that's like nations around the world. The U.S. is kind of lax when it comes to certain laws, and when it comes to drugs. I remember back in the day, a couple of years ago, maybe about a decade ago or so. Remember when Dallas Austin was caught in Dubai with paraphernalia and was held out there for an undisclosed amount of time? And you have to be conscientious when you're traveling overseas that you're not in the continental United States, and their laws and their tolerance for certain behavior is very, very slim. So just moving forward, when traveling, do the research on where you're going, what type of laws and what their standpoint is as far as when it comes to certain substances, alcohol, cigarettes, drugs. Like when you travel to certain Middle Eastern countries, they have zero tolerance for that.
Yeah, zero tolerance.
Yeah.
But there's one thing where you just travel, you visit or vacation or what have you, and even just do business. But when you live out there for a certain period of time, and they said that she was there for like 10 years because she played basketball in the off season, and she make a lot of money overseas. As a matter of fact, a lot of WNBA basketball players, they like to go overseas because they get paid more money. It supplement their income from the WNBA to overseas. Like they play overseas, like in Turkey, in addition to Russia and China and places like that. It's they got to be very mindful, like you say, and very, very cautious, because a lot of countries now, they could see that they could use the American citizens as a pawn, as a negotiating tactic. And before in the past, we never negotiate, whether it's with terrorists or certain countries that hold Americans hostage. So what has changed? Is it the new administration or?
I mean, it's all politics at the end of the day.
Yeah, true.
You have to give a little to get a little.
True.
And who knows what the ulterior motives were as far as behind the scenes wheeling and dealing and talks and negotiations to facilitate this particular exchange. But, at the end of the day, one of the Americans is home.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. I'm sure her family's quite pleased and overjoyed to have her back in time for the holidays. I'm sure she herself is pleased and overjoyed after being, held in captivity for so long in a foreign country.
Yeah.
So, there's pros and cons to it at the end of the day. It just depends on where you as an individual, your perspective.
Yeah.
And, this is the perspective of Chief and Stero.
My advice to her, Brittney, steer her from the ganja.
Just be conscientious of, what you're doing and how you're doing it, and be safe.
Yes.
And with that said, like, subscribe, share. Until next time, Chief and Stero.
Socialmobie.com